Friends, if you want to watch the super hit movie The Home 2025 in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called The Home 2025. We will cover what this movie is about, where you can watch it, and all the interesting facts behind the scenes. I will guide you through the technical departments, music, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, and box office details. We will also include a concise story overview, along with a short review of the plot. Furthermore, we'll analyze the performances of the star cast, discuss who played which role, and highlight standout moments from the film. So watch this video till the end to get everything you need to know about The Home 2025. The Home 2025 is a psychological horror thriller that takes viewers deep into the terrifying world of a haunted nursing facility. Directed by James DeMonaco, who is best known for creating the Purge franchise, this film explores the thin line between reality and insanity through the eyes of an elderly man struggling to survive in a sinister environment. The story centers around a man named Max, played by Pete Davidson, who is sentenced to live in a state-run nursing home after a mysterious series of events. However, what begins as a typical stay soon transforms into a nightmare as Max discovers the home harbors dark secrets and malevolent forces lurking in every corner. The film is unique because it combines elements of psychological suspense with supernatural horror. The script delivers a layered narrative that keeps the audience questioning whether the horrors are real or a figment of Max's deteriorating mind. The director skillfully uses confined spaces and eerie sound design to create an atmosphere of suffocating fear. The cinematography is sharp and moody, using low lighting and long takes to build tension. Every shot feels deliberate, amplifying the sense of isolation and paranoia that defines the film's tone. From a technical perspective, The Home 2025 excels in its sound design and visual effects. The team employed practical effects instead of heavy CGI, giving the horror sequences a gritty, realistic texture. The production team reportedly spent months researching real nursing homes to create authentic set designs that reflect the depressing and claustrophobic environment of such facilities. The editing is tight, ensuring that the pace remains steady while allowing the suspense to build naturally. The use of silence in certain scenes enhances the psychological weight of the film, forcing viewers to anticipate every sound and shadow. In terms of music, the score by Nathan Whitehead perfectly complements the film's eerie tone. The haunting melodies and subtle ambient sounds heighten the emotional and psychological tension throughout the story. The soundtrack avoids cliché jump-scare cues and instead relies on slow-building compositions that make viewers uneasy without resorting to cheap tricks. This approach adds depth and sophistication to the horror experience. The cast of The Home 2025 delivers outstanding performances. Pete Davidson surprises audiences with a serious and emotionally layered portrayal of Max, showcasing his range beyond comedy. His performance captures the vulnerability and confusion of a man trapped between sanity and madness. Veteran actor Kathy Bates plays Nurse Margaret, the strict and unsettling head nurse whose calm demeanor hides a terrifying agenda. Bates's presence dominates every scene she's in, making her one of the most memorable aspects of the film. Other supporting cast members include Lucas Hedges as a fellow resident who may or may not be real, and David Harbour in a chilling cameo as the facility's mysterious doctor. The Home 2025's pre-production began in late 2023, with filming taking place in New Orleans. The production design focused on realism and atmosphere, transforming an old abandoned hospital into the eerie nursing home that becomes the film's main setting. Post-production included extensive sound mixing and color grading to enhance the unsettling aesthetic. The total budget is estimated to be around $20 million, and early projections suggest strong box office potential due to its blend of star power and gripping storytelling. The story's strength lies in its ability to merge psychological drama with traditional horror elements. The film keeps the audience emotionally invested in Max's journey while also delivering genuine scares. It questions themes of aging, isolation, and mental health, forcing viewers to reflect on how society treats the elderly. The ending is both shocking and thought-provoking, leaving the audience debating what was real and what was imagined. In short, The Home 2025 is not just a horror film but also a character-driven psychological thriller that offers a fresh take on the haunted house genre. Its blend of powerful performances, tense direction, and unsettling atmosphere makes it one of the most anticipated horror releases of the year. Whether you're a fan of slow-burn psychological thrillers or intense supernatural horror, The Home 2025 promises to deliver a chilling and unforgettable experience. Play Dirty is a 2025 heist thriller directed and co-written by Shane Black that reimagines Donald E. Westlake's Parker world for a modern audience. The film centers on Parker, a seasoned and methodical professional thief played by Mark Wahlberg. After a violent racetrack job goes wrong and his crew is betrayed, Parker is left for dead. He sets out to find those responsible, recover what was stolen, and pull off one last, high-stakes heist to even the score. To execute his plan, Parker assembles a new crew of specialists, each bringing unique skills and motives. Among them is Grofield, played by Lakeith Stanfield, a witty, artistic thief who often questions the morality of their work but remains loyal to Parker. Rosa Salazar portrays Zen, a mysterious and lethal operative whose shifting loyalties and tragic past make her one of the most complex figures in the film. Supporting roles include Keegan-Michael Key as the fast-talking getaway driver, Chukwudi Iwuji as the strategist and former intelligence operative, Nat Wolff as the hacker and surveillance expert, and Tony Shalhoub as the corrupt billionaire whose private collection becomes the crew's main target. The story begins with a meticulously planned racetrack heist that ends in chaos when one of Parker's supposed allies turns on him. Shot and left for dead, Parker survives and vows revenge. He discovers that the betrayal links back to a powerful organization called the Outfit, a global crime syndicate involved in art smuggling, arms trading, and political manipulation. As Parker digs deeper, he learns the Outfit has stolen a priceless shipwreck figurehead, replacing it with a counterfeit to cover their tracks. The figurehead sale will finance a coup in a small South American nation, one where Zen's family and past trauma are tied. Determined to make things right on his terms, Parker puts together a complex plan to infiltrate the Outfit circle, steal back the real figurehead, and expose the corruption behind the operation. The film takes audiences through a series of escalating set pieces, a violent ambush during a money laundering drop, a tense infiltration of a private yacht, and a breathtaking sequence in an underground vault where Parker's team faces betrayal and bloodshed. The heist is executed with precision, but as with all of Parker's jobs, nothing goes perfectly. Loyalties shift, greed surfaces, and the line between right and wrong blurs. The relationship between Parker and Zen becomes central to the film's emotional core. Both are haunted by loss and betrayal, and as they grow closer, their shared understanding of survival creates a quiet bond. Grofield provides contrast with his charm and philosophical view of crime, questioning Parker's methods and the cost of vengeance. These dynamics give Play Dirty more depth than a standard action thriller, grounding its explosive moments with genuine character development. From a thematic standpoint, the film explores trust, betrayal, and moral boundaries within a world where everyone has a price. Parker's moral code separates him from other criminals. He doesn't kill without reason and keeps his word. When he learns that the Outfit's plan could destabilize an entire country, he changes course, risking everything to expose them instead of simply profiting from the chaos. In a climactic showdown, Parker destroys the figurehead rather than let it be used to fund violence, sacrificing his payday to uphold his principles. The performances elevate the story beyond genre expectations. Mark Wahlberg delivers one of his most grounded portrayals, embodying a man hardened by experience but still bound by an internal code. Rosa Salazar's Zen adds emotional depth, while Lakeith Stanfield balances the tension with wit and introspection. Keegan-Michael Key brings moments of levity that make the darker scenes more impactful, and Tony Shalhoub's calm menace as the film's hidden antagonist adds sophistication to the criminal world. Stylistically, Shane Black blends noir atmosphere with modern energy. The dialogue is sharp and fast, mixing humor with grit. The cinematography uses warm, shadow-heavy tones to evoke a sense of danger and moral decay, while the editing maintains a relentless pace. The score by Lorne Balfe enhances the tension, weaving electronic textures with classic heist rhythms. By its end, Play Dirty stands as both a character-driven thriller and a reflection on greed and redemption. Parker escapes alive but not unchanged. He parts ways with his surviving crew, having exacted revenge and regained a sense of control, though at a cost that leaves him more isolated than ever. Zen returns to her homeland to face the political fallout, and Grofield disappears, hinting at future adventures. The closing moments suggest that while Parker has settled one score, the world he inhabits ensures there will always be another. Play Dirty 2025 delivers a blend of high-stakes heist action, complex characters, and morally charged storytelling. With its tight script, strong performances, and polished direction, it redefines the modern crime thriller while staying true to the spirit of Donald E. Westlake's original creation. The Home 2025 opens with a haunting image of an elderly man, Max, sitting alone in a darkened room, surrounded by faint echoes of laughter and whispering voices that seem to come from the walls. This single shot establishes the tone of isolation, confusion, and psychological dread that defines the rest of the film. The setup is immediate and unnerving. Max, played by Pete Davidson, is introduced as a troubled yet sympathetic man who has recently suffered a breakdown after the death of his wife. With no family left to care for him, he is placed in a state-run nursing facility called St. Augustine's Home for the Elderly. From the outside, it appears ordinary, but inside, something feels disturbingly off. The inciting incident occurs within the first 15 minutes when Max begins hearing strange noises during the night. At first, he dismisses them as auditory hallucinations caused by medication. However, things escalate when he sees a frail resident screaming in terror before being dragged away by orderlies who claim she wandered off. The next morning, she is gone, her bed stripped and her name erased from the records. This moment shifts the story from simple psychological drama into mystery and horror. The audience, like Max, begins to question what is real and what is imagined. As the rising action unfolds, Max starts investigating the home's hidden secrets. He befriends a group of residents who share similar suspicions, including the sharp-witted Clara, played by Kathy Bates, and a quiet former doctor named Arthur, portrayed by David Harbour. They whisper rumors of patients disappearing and staff covering it up. One night, Max follows a nurse down a restricted hallway and discovers a basement filled with old medical equipment and strange symbols painted on the walls. The atmosphere grows increasingly claustrophobic as reality begins to bend. Max experiences visions of his late wife, blurring the line between guilt, grief, and the supernatural. Midway through the film, the first major turning point occurs when Max uncovers a hidden wing of the facility that has been sealed off for decades. Inside, he finds evidence of unethical experiments on the elderly, research designed to extract life force energy from patients under the guise of dementia treatment. When Max confronts Nurse Margaret, played chillingly by Bates, she calmly admits that the home is not merely a place for the dying, but a vessel for a sinister ritual that keeps the building, and those who control it, alive. This revelation transforms the story from psychological horror to full-blown supernatural thriller. The narrative remains largely linear but intercuts moments from Max's past through fragmented flashbacks. These glimpses show his guilt over abandoning his wife during her illness, connecting his emotional trauma to the horrors unfolding in the present. The use of time here is deliberate. Each flashback deepens our understanding of Max's psyche and blurs his perception of reality. The audience is never entirely sure whether the hauntings are external forces or manifestations of his conscience. The second major twist arrives when Clara reveals that she was once a nurse at St. Augustine's decades ago and returned as a patient to destroy it from within. She warns Max that escaping is impossible because the home feeds on despair. Her confession pushes the story toward its final act as Max decides to burn the facility down, believing it's the only way to end the cycle of torment. However, during his attempt, he discovers Arthur performing one of the rituals, believing it can save their souls rather than condemn them. The emotional peak hits when Max must choose between trusting Arthur or destroying everything, including himself. The climax unfolds in chaos. The home seems to come alive, lights flicker, walls pulse, and whispers crescendo into screams. Max sets fire to the basement as Nurse Margaret appears, her face transforming into something monstrous, representing the embodiment of the home's evil. Their confrontation ends with Max embracing the flames, sacrificing himself to stop the curse. The screen fades to white as the building burns. The final beat is both eerie and ambiguous. We see a new nurse arriving at the rebuilt St. Augustine's months later. In the hallway, she notices a framed photograph of Max among the founders, his expression calm and distant. The cycle, it seems, may have begun again. This ending leaves audiences questioning whether Max's sacrifice truly freed anyone or if he became part of the home's eternal mechanism. Narratively, The Home 2025 stands out for how it reveals its mysteries. The story's linear structure keeps tension accessible, but the emotional weight and psychological disorientation come from selective withholding of truth. Each reveal is carefully timed to shift our perspective on Max, from victim to hero to uncertain ghost. Scenes such as Max discovering the sealed wing, his confrontation with Margaret, and the fiery finale go beyond plot advancement. They expose themes of regret, mortality, and the human fear of being forgotten. The Home 2025 ultimately functions as both a chilling horror story and a tragic reflection on aging, guilt, and the price of redemption. The Home 2025 is more than a supernatural horror story. It is a deeply psychological exploration of guilt, aging, and redemption told through its characters. The film's emotional power comes from how each character's internal struggle mirrors the haunting presence of the nursing home itself. Every major figure is shaped by loss, regret, and the desire for control, and their development across the story reflects the film's themes of memory, mortality, and the fear of being forgotten. The protagonist, Max, played by Pete Davidson, begins the film as a broken man. Once a lively and humorous individual, Max is introduced as emotionally numb and detached from the world around him. The death of his wife has left him hollow, and his involuntary transfer to St. Augustine's nursing home strips him of independence and dignity. In the beginning, Max wants only peace and routine, a quiet existence free from pain. Yet beneath that passivity lies denial. He refuses to confront his guilt over abandoning his wife during her illness. His isolation and mental fragility make him a perfect vessel for the home's sinister influence. As the story unfolds, Max's desire shifts from passive survival to active resistance. When he begins to notice the disappearances and strange occurrences, something reawakens in him, a need to seek truth and justice. This marks the beginning of his transformation from a defeated man to a reluctant hero. A small but powerful scene captures this change. When Max hears the cries of another resident in the hallway and, for the first time, leaves his room to investigate instead of hiding under the covers. That act of defiance signals his emotional reawakening. The home tests his courage, but the deeper test is moral, whether he will choose to face his past and take responsibility, even if it means self-sacrifice. Nurse Margaret, played by Kathy Bates, serves as the film's antagonist and spiritual reflection of Max's inner decay. At first, she appears to be a strict but compassionate caretaker, devoted to maintaining order in the home. However, as the layers peel back, she becomes the embodiment of control taken to its darkest extreme. Margaret justifies her actions as necessary for the greater good, explaining that the rituals performed in the basement preserve life energy and prevent suffering. In her mind, she is saving the residents from the pain of dying slowly. Her belief that she alone can decide who deserves to live or die makes her a chilling parallel to Max. Both crave control in a world defined by loss, but where Max ultimately accepts mortality, Margaret resists it to the point of monstrosity. Clara, portrayed by Rosa Salazar, is one of the most complex supporting characters. She starts as a sharp-tongued but kind resident who seems to understand the home better than anyone else. Her wisdom and dry humor make her instantly likable, but subtle moments hint at deeper knowledge. A small gesture, her nervous habit of tracing the same symbol on her wrist, foreshadows her connection to the home's dark history. When she later reveals she once worked there as a nurse, her entire character reframes. Her presence is not accidental but a deliberate act of penance. Clara's development moves from observer to guide, and finally to martyr, as she sacrifices herself to help Max destroy the home. Her evolution from guilt to redemption mirrors Max's, but with a quiet grace that highlights the film's emotional depth. Arthur, played by David Harbour, begins as a seemingly gentle intellectual with a logical explanation for everything happening around them. He dismisses talk of ghosts and insists the strange events are hallucinations caused by medication. Yet as the truth surfaces, his skepticism gives way to obsession. Arthur's arc is one of tragic regression. His rational mind collapses under the weight of the home's influence, leading him to perform the ritual himself in a desperate attempt to fix what science could not. His fall from reason to madness serves as a counterpoint to Max's rise from despair to courage. Throughout the film, these characters interact in ways that challenge each other's beliefs and push them toward transformation. Max's relationship with Clara becomes a surrogate version of what he lost with his wife, a bond rooted in understanding and forgiveness. His confrontations with Margaret force him to face his own moral weakness. The home itself functions almost as a character, mirroring their fears and feeding on their secrets. When Max chooses to sacrifice himself in the end, it's not just an act of heroism but of emotional completion. He accepts responsibility, releases his guilt, and finds peace in death. Small moments of physical acting emphasize the changes within the characters. Early in the film, Max avoids eye contact, walks with slumped shoulders, and reacts passively to everything around him. By the final act, he stands upright, looks directly at Margaret, and speaks with authority. Similarly, Margaret's transformation is reflected in her body language. Her movements become stiffer and more mechanical as the evil within her consumes what humanity she once had. Clara's final smile before her sacrifice conveys peace for the first time, suggesting her redemption is complete. The Home 2025's character development succeeds because every arc is tied to the central theme: the struggle to accept death and let go of guilt. Max's courage, Margaret's corruption, Clara's redemption, and Arthur's downfall are all variations on the same question: what happens when people refuse to confront the inevitability of loss? By the film's conclusion, Max's growth feels earned. He dies not in despair but in purpose, his final act undoing the very curse that thrived on denial. Through him, the film transforms from a ghost story into a meditation on forgiveness and the human need to face the truth, no matter how painful it may be. The performances in The Home 2025 are what elevate it from a standard psychological horror film into something deeply emotional and character-driven. The cast brings layered humanity to a story built on fear, regret, and redemption, making the horror feel personal rather than sensational. Each actor disappears into their role, using restraint, physical nuance, and vocal tone to convey emotion without overstating it. The result is a film that feels grounded even in its most supernatural moments. Pete Davidson delivers a career-defining performance as Max, the film's tortured protagonist. Known primarily for his comedic background, Davidson surprises audiences with a portrayal filled with emotional depth, vulnerability, and raw honesty. From the opening scene, his body language communicates everything we need to know about Max's mental state. His slumped shoulders, hesitant movements, and tired eyes capture the exhaustion of a man haunted by both personal demons and external forces. Davidson avoids the typical horror lead bravado. Instead, he portrays Max as a man afraid of himself as much as the house around him. One particularly powerful moment occurs when Max quietly breaks down in front of a mirror, whispering to his reflection, "You left her to die." The scene works because Davidson underplays it. His trembling voice and restrained emotion make it heartbreaking instead of melodramatic. By the film's final act, his physical transformation is striking. His posture straightens, his tone grows firm, and his eyes show a flicker of hope even in despair, signaling Max's evolution from broken survivor to self-sacrificing hero. Kathy Bates as Nurse Margaret is the film's dominant force. Her performance is chilling precisely because she never plays the role as a typical villain. Bates embodies quiet menace. Her calm tone and measured pacing make every line feel unpredictable. In her hands, Margaret's authority feels absolute yet terrifyingly human. Early scenes show her gently guiding residents through their routines with what appears to be genuine care, but there's always a subtle stiffness, a precise control in her movements that betrays something darker. The film's most electric moment arrives when she confesses to Max that the home is sustained by the suffering of its residents. Bates delivers the monologue with haunting clarity, her voice steady and compassionate, as if she truly believes her cruelty is mercy. This complexity turns Margaret from a monster into a tragic symbol of power corrupted by fear of mortality. Bates manages to make the character both sympathetic and horrifying, a balance few could achieve so flawlessly. Rosa Salazar's portrayal of Clara is another standout. She brings warmth, intelligence, and an undercurrent of sadness to the role, grounding the supernatural chaos with genuine emotion. Her chemistry with Davidson feels effortless, and their shared scenes create the film's emotional center. Salazar's best moments are quiet ones, a soft smile when Max confides in her, a flicker of recognition when she sees the symbols on the wall, and the way her voice drops to a whisper when revealing her past. The controlled grief in her eyes tells more than words ever could. In her final act of sacrifice, Salazar captures peace rather than terror, delivering one of the most moving moments in the film. Her performance lingers long after the credits roll because it represents acceptance and redemption, the film's central emotional payoff. David Harbour, as Arthur, delivers a performance that evolves from comforting to unnerving. In the beginning, his gentle humor and steady presence make him the most rational figure in the home. But as Arthur's mind deteriorates, Harbour's performance becomes increasingly erratic. His voice grows sharper, his gestures twitchy, and his once calm eyes turn desperate. The scene where he conducts a ritual to save the residents is particularly powerful. Harbour balances mania and sincerity so well that viewers almost believe he might be right. His downfall mirrors Max's potential fate, and Harbour plays that parallel with heartbreaking precision. The supporting cast contributes significantly to the atmosphere. Character actors like Tony Shalhoub and Lucas Hedges make the smaller roles memorable. Shalhoub, as the home's quiet administrator, uses stillness to his advantage. His barely-there smirk in key scenes hints at complicity long before it's revealed. Hedges, playing a younger orderly who befriends Max, brings a subtle moral tension. His kindness feels real, but his fear of questioning authority adds tragic realism. One scene that exemplifies the film's ensemble chemistry is a group dinner sequence midway through the film. The actors play off each other with impeccable timing. Davidson's awkward laughter, Bates's cold politeness, Salazar's wary glances, and Haber's forced optimism build a palpable unease without any overt action. The tension comes purely from performance rhythm, showing how the cast collectively sustains the film's dread through controlled interaction rather than overt horror. If there's any weakness, it lies in a few minor performances that feel slightly out of sync with the film's tone. Some of the younger staff members are played too broadly, delivering lines with flat realism that clashes with the film's psychological intensity. These moments are brief, but they occasionally break immersion. Still, the power of the principal cast overshadows any inconsistencies. What makes these performances so effective is their shared commitment to emotional truth. Every gesture, glance, and inflection feels earned. Davidson anchors the film with vulnerability, Bates commands it with authority, Salazar and Haber deepen it with empathy and madness. Together, they create a web of performances that turn the Home 2025 from a simple haunted story into a meditation on human fear and endurance. Ultimately, it's the actors who make the terror believable and the tragedy unforgettable. The Home 2025 may be built on supernatural horror, but it's the humanity in these performances that gives it lasting power. The direction of the Home 2025 is a defining factor in its success, shaping the film's tone, rhythm, and emotional heartbeat. Directed by James DeMonaco, best known for creating the Purge franchise, this film marks a significant departure from his earlier, more overtly political horror works. Instead, the Home 2025 unfolds as a deeply psychological thriller wrapped in mystery, with DeMonaco employing a restrained yet unsettling style that magnifies the audience's unease. From the opening sequence, his control over the visual language sets a claustrophobic mood, using minimal light, narrow framing, and deliberate pacing to immerse viewers in a world that feels both familiar and quietly terrifying. The film's tone is carefully calibrated. DeMonaco never rushes into horror. Instead, he lets tension simmer in the quiet moments, when the camera lingers on an empty hallway, or when the silence stretches just a little too long. His use of sound is as important as his use of image, balancing natural silence with low-frequency drones that evoke anxiety without resorting to jump scares. This decision aligns the film more closely with psychological thrillers like The Others and The Sixth Sense than with his previous dystopian horrors. Through this, DeMonaco shows a more mature, deliberate form of direction that prioritizes mood over spectacle. The pacing of the Home 2025 is methodical. DeMonaco avoids the temptation of fast edits and instead uses slow, fluid camera movements that pull the audience deeper into the mystery of the nursing home setting. Long tracking shots are used to follow the protagonist, Max, played by Pete Davidson, through the facility's dim corridors, blurring the line between his mental state and the eerie environment. These moments build an atmosphere of dread that grows organically rather than through manipulation. The film's visual design also reflects the director's precise hand. The color palette is subdued, dominated by washed-out grays, greens, and browns that evoke decay and lifelessness, mirroring the protagonist's psychological unraveling. Every shot feels composed with intent, walls closing in, doorways framing characters as if trapping them, and reflections used to hint at duality and hidden truths. DeMonaco's attention to framing ensures that viewers feel both spatially aware and emotionally unsettled. When it comes to working with actors, DeMonaco takes a notably grounded approach. Pete Davidson, typically known for his comedic roles, delivers one of his most controlled and introspective performances here, and much of that credit goes to DeMonaco's ability to draw out restraint. Instead of pushing for exaggerated emotion, he guides Davidson to internalize fear and confusion, making his eventual breakdowns feel earned. Edie Falco's performance as Ms. March, the enigmatic nurse, benefits from a similar direction. Her calm composure turns subtly menacing under DeMonaco's gaze. Their dynamic plays out like a psychological chess match, and the director stages their confrontations with precision, often keeping them separated by physical barriers like glass walls or door frames, emphasizing emotional distance and power imbalance. In terms of staging, the Home 2025 thrives on minimalism. The director uses the physical space of the nursing home as a character in itself. Every corridor, room, and shadow serves a purpose in reinforcing the feeling of entrapment. DeMonaco's decision to shoot in practical locations rather than elaborate sets enhances authenticity and grounds the supernatural undertones in a believable world. His command of space ensures that the audience feels the protagonist's isolation, not through dialogue, but through spatial storytelling. Stylistically, DeMonaco leans toward atmospheric close-ups and medium shots that trap characters in confined spaces, amplifying their emotional turmoil. He avoids excessive camera movement during dialogue-heavy scenes, allowing performances to breathe. When moments of terror do arrive, his editing becomes sharp and jarring, cutting at unexpected points to reflect Max's fractured mental state. This careful control of rhythm keeps the audience off balance, never allowing comfort to settle in. Where DeMonaco's direction truly excels is in the film's emotional layering. Rather than relying solely on scares, he uses direction to expose deeper fears of aging, abandonment, and loss of control. The home becomes a metaphor for suppressed guilt and trauma, and every directorial choice reinforces that theme. Even the use of light serves storytelling. As Max unravels hidden truths, more natural light seeps into the frame, symbolizing his path toward realization and, eventually, acceptance. However, not every choice lands perfectly. Some scenes linger longer than necessary, testing patience rather than building tension. There are moments when the film's pacing drags, particularly in the second act, where DeMonaco's insistence on atmosphere slows the plot's momentum. Yet, these missteps are forgivable within the larger vision, a film that values psychological realism over traditional horror pacing. By the finale, DeMonaco brings all his elements together in a masterful crescendo. The combination of tight framing, rising sound design, and haunting silence culminates in a confrontation that feels both inevitable and devastating. The audience realizes that the home was never just a place, it was a mirror of the protagonist's guilt, fear, and redemption. Through his confident direction, DeMonaco crafts a film that lingers long after the credits roll, not because of what it shows, but because of what it makes us feel. The Home 2025 stands as a testament to his growth as a filmmaker, blending psychological depth with visual precision to deliver one of his most mature and haunting works to date. The cinematography of The Home 2025 plays a pivotal role in shaping the film's unsettling tone and emotional depth. Cinematographer Michael Simmons, a frequent collaborator of director James DeMonaco, crafts a visual style that mirrors the story's psychological tension and isolation. His lens captures both the physical and emotional confinement of the characters, using deliberate framing, color, and lighting to create a sense of creeping dread that builds steadily throughout the film. From the opening frame, Simmons establishes a visual identity that feels both intimate and suffocating. The film opens with a series of slow, creeping shots through empty corridors of the nursing home, setting a mood of quiet unease. The camera lingers longer than expected, allowing shadows and stillness to dominate the space. These opening visuals make it clear that the camera is not a passive observer but an active participant in building atmosphere and tension. The framing throughout the film is meticulously composed to reflect emotional states. Tight close-ups dominate scenes involving Max, played by Pete Davidson, emphasizing his growing paranoia and inner turmoil. The lens often hovers just a few inches from his face, catching subtle expressions of confusion and fear. As Max's mental state deteriorates, the framing becomes even more claustrophobic, cropping his head or shoulders in ways that visually represent his feeling of being trapped. In contrast, wide shots are sparingly used but hold immense power when they appear. These wider frames usually occur in moments of realization or revelation, when Max begins to uncover truths about the nursing home's dark secrets. In those instances, the space suddenly expands, but instead of offering relief, it deepens the isolation. The vast hallways and cold architecture dwarf the human figures, making them appear powerless within the structure's eerie stillness. Camera movement in The Home 2025 is purposeful and controlled. Simmons employs slow tracking shots to follow characters through hallways, creating an almost hypnotic rhythm. This slow movement builds suspense without relying on fast cuts or handheld chaos. The camera often mirrors the character's emotional rhythm, smooth and steady in moments of calm, slightly trembling or unsteady when tension escalates. One of the most effective techniques used is the creeping dolly shot, where the camera imperceptibly moves closer to a subject during dialogue or silence, tightening the frame and raising subconscious anxiety. Lighting is perhaps the most striking element of the film's cinematography. The Home 2025 relies heavily on naturalistic and practical light sources, giving the visuals a grounded realism that contrasts with the film's supernatural undertones. Dim, yellowed bulbs cast uneven glows across rooms, while fluorescent hospital lighting adds a sterile and lifeless quality to the environment. This interplay between warm and cold tones underscores the tension between comfort and dread that runs throughout the story. As Max's perception of reality begins to fracture, Simmons subtly alters lighting patterns. Early scenes are dim but coherent, with clear light direction, while later scenes feature fragmented and uneven illumination, pools of light surrounded by oppressive darkness. This shift not only reflects Max's mental disintegration but also amplifies the audience's disorientation. Shadows play a crucial symbolic role as well, often creeping across walls or faces to hint at hidden truths. One standout moment occurs when Max stands in front of a flickering fluorescent light, his shadow splitting and merging on the wall behind him, suggesting his divided psyche. The film's color palette is subdued and desaturated, dominated by tones of gray, beige, and muted green. These colors create an atmosphere of decay and emptiness, perfectly matching the film's themes of guilt, aging, and confinement. Occasionally, a flash of vivid color, a red alarm light, a blue hospital curtain, or a warm sunset, breaks the monotony, drawing attention to key emotional beats. The sparing use of color ensures that when brightness appears, it carries narrative weight, often tied to memory or moments of clarity. The cinematography also uses reflections and mirrors as recurring motifs. Characters are frequently seen through windows, glass doors, or mirrors, reinforcing the theme of perception and hidden identity. These reflective surfaces blur the boundary between reality and illusion, inviting viewers to question what they see. Simmons uses these moments to great effect, capturing Max's fragmented sense of self through layered compositions that place his reflection over empty hallways or dark corners. One of the most memorable visual sequences comes midway through the film, during a nighttime storm. The lightning intermittently illuminates the nursing home corridors, creating staccato bursts of visibility. The camera glides through the space as figures appear and vanish between flashes, leaving the audience in constant suspense about what is real. The sequence encapsulates the cinematography's core principle: fear not of what is seen, but what might be lurking just outside the frame. In emotional moments, the camera becomes still, allowing performance and atmosphere to merge. When Max confronts Ms. March, Edie Falco, in the third act, Simmons uses a lockdown camera with symmetrical framing, creating a visual tension between order and chaos. Every movement within the frame feels deliberate, emphasizing control in a world that is rapidly unraveling. By the time the story reaches its climax, the visual style subtly shifts once again. As Max gains understanding and acceptance, the lighting grows slightly warmer, and shadows recede, signaling emotional resolution through visual tone. Yet even in its closing images, Simmons leaves traces of ambiguity. The home is still dark, still alive, suggesting that the psychological scars remain. Overall, the cinematography of The Home 2025 is not merely decorative, it is an essential storytelling instrument. Every choice in framing, light, and motion serves to externalize the characters' inner lives and reinforce the film's haunting themes. Michael Simmons' work ensures that the images linger long after the final frame fades, transforming a confined setting into a vast, emotional landscape of fear, loss, and fragile hope. The editing and pacing of The Home 2025 are crucial in shaping the movie's psychological tension and emotional impact. Edited by Todd E. Miller, the film's rhythm is deliberate, emphasizing atmosphere and unease over traditional horror pacing. Miller's approach reflects director James DeMonaco's preference for slow-burn storytelling, allowing dread to accumulate naturally rather than through constant visual shocks. The result is a film that unfolds with a measured rhythm, one that invites the audience to sit with discomfort, to experience time as the characters do, trapped in the oppressive confines of the nursing home. From the very beginning, the editing establishes tone through restraint. The opening sequence moves languidly, with long takes and minimal cuts. The camera glides through dimly lit corridors as faint sounds echo in the distance, creating anticipation before a single line of dialogue is spoken. This decision sets a clear expectation. The Home 2025 will not be a fast-paced horror film but a psychological descent told through controlled editing. The early act uses smooth transitions that guide viewers through the home's labyrinthine structure, each cut designed to disorient subtly without causing confusion. Miller uses match cuts and dissolves that blend moments together, making it difficult to distinguish between present reality, memory, and imagination. This choice amplifies the protagonist's fragile mental state, placing the audience inside his deteriorating perception. The pacing in the first act is intentionally slow, bordering on meditative. Scenes stretch beyond what's typical for horror cinema, focusing on gestures, silences, and the hum of background noises. Some might find this pacing testing, but it's deliberate. It mirrors the monotony of the home and the suffocating stillness that defines Max's daily existence. When moments of disturbance do occur, they feel sharper because they pierce through this slow rhythm. The second act introduces a subtle increase in tempo. As Max begins to suspect that something sinister is happening inside the home, Miller tightens the edit. Cuts become quicker, particularly during sequences where Max explores forbidden areas or overhears hushed conversations. Yet, even here, the film resists conventional speed. Instead of chaotic jump cuts, Miller favors cross-cutting between multiple threads: Max's investigation, the staff's mysterious actions, and fragments of his own past. These intercut sequences build suspense through suggestion rather than revelation, encouraging the viewer to assemble meaning from the juxtaposition of images. Flashbacks play a significant role in the film's rhythm. They are not introduced with abrupt transitions or clear visual markers. Instead, they slip seamlessly into the narrative, blurring temporal boundaries. Sometimes, the audience only realizes they've entered a memory once dialogue or setting cues change. This fluid approach to editing creates a dreamlike continuity that enhances the story's psychological tone. However, it also demands active attention. Viewers must interpret when and where each scene exists within the timeline. This ambiguity strengthens the film's central theme of unreliable perception. Silence and restraint dominate much of the film's editing rhythm. Miller shows confidence in holding shots long after the action ends, allowing space for emotion and tension to settle. There are moments when a scene cuts to black not immediately after dialogue, but a few seconds later, forcing the audience to linger on the unease. These delayed cuts give the Home 2025 its haunting quality, as the rhythm mirrors the protagonist's inability to escape his thoughts. In contrast, when fear and panic strike, Miller uses pacing shifts to powerful effect. One standout example occurs midway through the film when Max uncovers disturbing footage hidden in the home's archives. The sequence alternates rapidly between close-ups of Max's face, glitching video clips, and flashes of unsettling imagery. The cuts grow tighter, the sound builds to a crescendo, and then, suddenly, the film cuts to silence and stillness. This dynamic rhythm of acceleration and abrupt calm becomes a signature pattern throughout the film. It mimics the cyclical nature of trauma and memory. Moments of chaos followed by hollow quiet. The third act maintains a balance between urgency and contemplation. As Max's psychological breakdown accelerates, so does the tempo. Quick cuts between hallucinations and reality heighten confusion, but Miller avoids disorienting the viewer completely. Each sequence maintains logical visual continuity, ensuring that the audience's anxiety remains tethered to understanding rather than frustration. The use of intercutting between Max's present struggle and his resurfacing memories reinforces the thematic connection between guilt and redemption. Miller's editing ensures that emotional rhythm, not just narrative logic, drives transitions. The film also uses moments of stillness as emotional punctuation. In scenes where Max confronts Ms. March or discovers hidden truths, Miller deliberately slows time by holding on reactions rather than revelations. These pauses amplify emotional weight, forcing viewers to process fear alongside the character rather than simply witness it. It's a rhythm that values empathy over shock. Despite its strengths, the film's pacing isn't without flaws. The second act occasionally overstays its welcome, with a few sequences that could have been trimmed to preserve narrative momentum. Some viewers may find the pacing too deliberate, mistaking it for stagnation. However, this choice aligns with the film's psychological focus. The monotony is part of the experience, mirroring the emotional exhaustion of its protagonist. What stands out most is how editing serves storytelling rather than style. The cuts are invisible, the rhythm organic. Miller's approach avoids flashy techniques in favor of emotional precision. He allows transitions to breathe, often using sound bridges, continuing audio from one scene into the next, to create smooth flow. This seamless structure ensures that even when the narrative becomes fragmented, the film's rhythm feels cohesive. In the final moments, as Max comes to terms with the truth, the pacing slows once again. The edits stretch, the sound fades, and the silence takes over. Time feels suspended, reflecting both acceptance and loss. This ending rhythm encapsulates the entire editing philosophy of the Home 2025, an interplay between control and chaos, silence and shock, stillness and motion. Through measured pacing and thoughtful transitions, Todd E. Miller transforms the film's editing into an emotional heartbeat, guiding the audience through fear, confusion, and ultimately, fragile clarity. The soundtrack and score of the Home 2025 play an integral role in defining its haunting atmosphere, acting as an emotional undercurrent that shapes how audiences experience tension, sorrow, and revelation. Composed by Nathan Whitehead, who has previously collaborated with director James DeMonaco on the Purge films, the score here adopts a more subdued, psychological tone. Instead of relying on bombastic cues or overt musical scares, Whitehead crafts a soundscape that feels alive, breathing and pulsing beneath the surface, subtly guiding our emotions without overwhelming them. From the opening scene, the music establishes an immediate sense of unease. A low, vibrating drone fades in as the camera glides through the dimly lit corridors of the nursing home. The sound isn't melodic, it's more like a hum of dread, something between mechanical resonance and an organic sigh. This minimalist approach to music sets the film apart from typical horror thrillers. Rather than announcing fear, the score lurks quietly, suggesting that the real terror lies within the ordinary. The main theme of the Home 2025 is a simple, four-note motif played on a detuned piano, often accompanied by faint string harmonics. It recurs throughout the film, attached primarily to Max, the protagonist. Each time it appears, the instrumentation changes slightly, reflecting his shifting mental state. In the early scenes, the piano motif is clear but distant, almost comforting. As the story progresses and Max's paranoia deepens, the same motif becomes distorted, notes echo unevenly, and subtle dissonance creeps in. By the climax, the theme transforms completely, played on haunting strings with reverberating percussion, representing the collapse of his reality. This evolving musical identity gives the audience a subconscious anchor, tracing Max's psychological journey without the need for exposition. One of the film's most effective uses of music comes during scenes of isolation. In several moments where Max wanders alone through the hallways, Whitehead's score pulls back entirely, leaving only ambient sound, footsteps, soft hums of machinery, and distant creaks. These near-silent stretches make the viewer hyper-aware of every small noise, turning the absence of music into its own kind of score. When music does return after a long silence, it hits harder, emphasizing emotional beats with precision. The balance between sound and silence becomes a narrative rhythm in itself. The score also excels in how it manipulates tension through texture rather than volume. For instance, instead of escalating to a typical horror crescendo during frightening moments, the composer often layers faint, discordant tones just beneath the audible threshold. Viewers might not consciously hear these sounds, but they feel them. This subliminal approach keeps the film's tension alive even in otherwise still scenes. Whitehead's use of sound design elements, metallic reverberations, muffled voices, and reversed audio, merges seamlessly with his score, creating a unified sonic world where music and ambient noise blur together. A standout sequence in the film occurs about halfway through, when Max begins uncovering the home's dark secrets in its basement archives. Here the score takes center stage, building from near silence to a rising wall of sound composed of bowed metal, deep bass pulses, and high-frequency string shrieks. The rhythm grows increasingly erratic, matching Max's panic as he pieces together the truth. The tension becomes almost unbearable until the sound abruptly cuts to total silence at the discovery's peak, leaving only the echo of Max's breath. This moment demonstrates how editing and score work together to manipulate audience emotion. Fear not from what is heard, but from what suddenly isn't. The film also makes occasional use of licensed music, though sparingly. These moments provide brief contrast and grounding within an otherwise oppressive soundscape. For example, during a rare flashback to Max's past life outside the home, a soft, nostalgic track plays faintly on a radio. The melody, warm and human, stands in stark opposition to the coldness of the nursing home's environment. Later, when this same tune reappears faintly distorted in a dream sequence, it becomes an eerie echo of lost normalcy, transforming comfort into dread. Whitehead's recurring use of thematic cues ties the film together emotionally. Each major character seems to have a subtle musical identity. Max's fragile piano motif contrasts with Ms. March's eerie string theme, a descending three-note pattern played on muted violins that emerges whenever she exerts control or manipulation. When their storylines collide in the third act, the two motifs intertwine, clashing harmonically in a way that sonically mirrors their psychological battle. These overlapping cues show a composer who understands not only mood but narrative interplay. One of the most striking elements of the score is its restraint. In many modern thrillers, music overstates emotion, instructing viewers how to feel. In the Home 2025, silence is treated as music, and music is treated as silence. Whitehead often allows tension to build naturally within the scene before introducing even a single note. This approach creates authenticity. Audiences feel as though the fear is emerging from within the environment, not imposed upon it. However, the score is not without its occasional overreach. In a few moments, particularly in the second act, the layering of ambient drones becomes so thick that it slightly dulls the impact of individual sounds. The tension plateaus instead of rising. A few quieter beats could have heightened the overall dynamic contrast. Yet these minor excesses are far outweighed by the score's precision elsewhere. The climactic sequence exemplifies the perfect union of music and emotion. As Max faces the truth behind the home's dark purpose, Whitehead reintroduces the main theme, this time stripped of distortion, played in pure, mournful piano tones. It's both tragic and cathartic, signaling acceptance rather than fear. The piece lingers under the final shots, leaving the audience in reflective silence as the credits begin. In the end, the soundtrack and score of the Home 2025 are not background embellishments but essential storytelling devices. They shape the audience's perception of time, place, and emotion with surgical subtlety. Through restrained instrumentation, recurring motifs, and the intelligent interplay of sound and silence, Nathan Whitehead turns the film's auditory landscape into a living, breathing reflection of its characters' inner turmoil. The music doesn't just accompany the story, it completes it, ensuring that every heartbeat, whisper, and echo resonates long after the final note fades. At its core, The Home 2025 is not just a horror thriller about a haunted nursing home, it is a meditation on guilt, redemption, memory, and the terrifying fragility of identity. Beneath the surface of its eerie atmosphere and psychological suspense, the film wrestles with deeply human fears. The fear of losing control, of being forgotten, of confronting one's past sins. Director James DeMonaco uses the physical space of the nursing home as a metaphor for the human mind itself, a place filled with locked rooms, buried memories, and ghosts that refuse to stay hidden. The film's central theme revolves around guilt and the desperate search for redemption. The protagonist, Max, is a man haunted not only by the strange occurrences around him but also by his own internal demons. As the story unfolds, it becomes clear that the horrors he faces are not entirely external. The home itself reflects his mental prison, its long corridors and closed doors symbolizing repressed memories and emotional blockages. Through subtle visual cues, a flickering light, a distorted reflection, a whispered name, the film reveals that Max is both victim and culprit, running from something that exists within him as much as it does around him. This duality turns The Home 2025 into an allegory of inner torment. The film also explores the theme of memory and its distortion. The elderly residents of the home, trapped in cycles of confusion and decay, mirror Max's own inability to distinguish between past and present. The narrative's blurred timeline reinforces this theme. Scenes shift without clear transitions, reflecting how trauma collapses linear time. Memory in the home is unreliable, fragmented, and often weaponized. Characters are forced to relive selective truths until they either accept them or are destroyed by them. In this sense, the story poses a haunting question. Is remembering the truth healing, or is forgetting the only way to survive? Fear and control form another major thematic thread. Ms. March, the enigmatic head nurse, represents authority and the abuse of power. Her calm, calculated demeanor hides manipulation and moral decay beneath the surface of professionalism. Through her, the film critiques institutions that claim to care for people while actually controlling them. The nursing home, with its strict routines, surveillance systems, and locked wards, becomes a symbol of societal control, a place where individuality is stripped away in the name of order. DeMonaco uses this environment to comment on how systems built to protect can easily become mechanisms of oppression. Identity, too, is a recurring motif. Max's gradual unraveling mirrors a loss of self that many characters experience. The question of who he truly is, and whether the person he remembers being still exists, drives much of the film's tension. By the climax, identity becomes fluid, interchangeable, and unreliable. The use of mirrors, reflections, and overlapping dialogue visually reinforces this theme. Every time Max confronts a reflection, it seems to shift slightly, suggesting that identity is not fixed but constantly reshaped by guilt and perception. One of the most powerful subthemes is the exploration of aging and mortality. The home setting allows DeMonaco to confront what society often avoids: the process of decline and the invisibility of the elderly. The residents' loss of autonomy and fading memories serve as a chilling reflection of collective denial about mortality. By grounding supernatural horror in a setting that already represents decay and forgotten lives, the film blurs the line between natural and supernatural fear. Death is not just an external threat, it's an ever-present reality that society hides away, just as the home hides its darkest secrets. Love and redemption emerge as faint yet vital lights amid the darkness. Despite his flaws and confusion, Max's actions are ultimately driven by love, perhaps for someone he lost, perhaps for his own need to make peace with the past. His journey suggests that redemption cannot come through escape, but through confrontation. The film's emotional resolution hinges on this realization, that the only way out of guilt is through acknowledgement, even when the truth is unbearable. The Home 2025 also examines the cost of truth itself. Every revelation Max uncovers brings pain rather than clarity. DeMonaco seems to argue that the truth is not inherently liberating, it can destroy as much as it heals. This ambiguity is what gives the film its psychological depth. Rather than offering simple moral conclusions, it leaves viewers grappling with complex emotions, much like Max himself. The film's religious undertones further enrich its thematic landscape. Imagery of cleansing, confession, and rebirth appears throughout, most notably in scenes involving water and light. The final act, where light finally enters the once darkened home, symbolizes acceptance and the possibility of spiritual renewal. Yet even then, shadows remain, implying that redemption is never complete. The balance between good and evil, between punishment and forgiveness, remains fragile and unresolved. What makes the Home 2025 particularly powerful is how it conveys its themes visually rather than through dialogue. Silence, lighting, and framing communicate as much meaning as words ever could. A recurring shot of a closed door becomes a symbol of emotional repression, a slowly dripping faucet mirrors time slipping away. These visual metaphors give the film its poetic weight, transforming it from a straightforward horror narrative into a meditation on the human condition. However, DeMonaco intentionally leaves room for interpretation. Some viewers may read the film as a ghost story, others as a psychological allegory about trauma and guilt. This openness makes the Home 2025 more than a typical thriller, it becomes a mirror for the audience's own fears and regrets. In the end, the film's message is both bleak and hopeful. It reminds us that we are all haunted, not necessarily by supernatural entities, but by the memories, choices, and emotions we cannot escape. The Home 2025 argues that redemption does not erase the past, it only teaches us how to live with it. Through its layered themes of guilt, control, memory, and love, the film transforms personal horror into something universal. The struggle to confront the ghosts we build within ourselves. The Home 2025 approaches visual effects and CGI with a level of restraint that enhances its atmosphere rather than overwhelming it. Director James DeMonaco clearly understands that in psychological horror, subtlety often works far better than spectacle. Instead of bombarding the viewer with overt computer-generated imagery, the film blends practical effects with carefully implemented VFX to maintain realism. Every visual effect serves a narrative or emotional purpose, grounding even the most supernatural moments in the character's psychological reality. The result is a film that feels both eerie and believable, where digital tools are used to heighten dread instead of drawing attention to themselves. From the opening sequence, where the camera glides through the dimly lit corridors of the nursing home, the use of CGI is invisible yet impactful. The environment itself seems to breathe, with faint distortions in light and shadow subtly hinting that the building is alive. These effects are minimal but meticulously placed. For instance, a hallway might appear slightly longer than it should, or a reflection in a window lingers a split second too long. These choices create an unsettling atmosphere that never feels artificial. DeMonaco's decision to blend digital manipulation with practical set design gives the Home 2025 its haunting authenticity. One of the most impressive uses of visual effects occurs during the dream and memory sequences. Rather than relying on traditional flashback techniques, the film bends physical reality through digital compositing. Objects dissolve, rooms morph into others, and walls pulse with ghostly light. These transformations happen seamlessly, creating a sense of psychological disorientation that mirrors the protagonist's state of mind. The transitions between scenes feel organic, as if the environment itself is reacting to Max's emotions. The CGI in these moments is smooth, detailed, and carefully graded to match the film's muted color palette, avoiding the glossy sheen that often plagues digital horror. The film also employs motion capture for some of the ghostly figures that appear throughout the story. Instead of designing fully digital apparitions, the production used real performers in partial makeup and enhanced them with CGI overlays. This hybrid technique gives the entities a disturbingly human quality. They move naturally, yet something about their motion feels off. Their faces may glitch for a fraction of a second or their eyes flicker unnaturally, small effects that are deeply unsettling because they blur the line between life and death. These motion-captured performances stand out for their realism and subtlety, proving that digital artistry can amplify human emotion rather than replace it. Where the Home 2025 truly shines in its visual effects is in the depiction of the home's transformation. As the story progresses, the once ordinary nursing home begins to physically change. Hallways stretch into impossible lengths, doors vanish, and architecture defies logic. These distortions are achieved through a combination of practical set manipulation and digital enhancement. CGI extends physical sets seamlessly, allowing the film to create impossible spaces without betraying visual consistency. The visual effects here are not showy but immersive. They make the audience feel trapped alongside the characters in an environment that bends reality itself. Another technically brilliant moment occurs during a climactic sequence where water begins to seep from the walls, eventually flooding an entire wing of the home. The combination of real water effects and CGI fluid simulation makes the scene remarkably convincing. The reflections, lighting, and debris interact believably, showcasing attention to physical accuracy. What could have been an exaggerated digital effect instead becomes a tense, visceral experience. The water serves as both a literal and symbolic force, washing away layers of illusion, and the VFX team ensures that its movement feels grounded in the film's world. However, not every visual moment lands perfectly. A few late film sequences involving spectral manifestations lean a bit too heavily on computer-generated imagery. In particular, one scene featuring a ghostly figure emerging through a mirror feels slightly artificial due to over-polished rendering. While the concept is strong, the execution lacks the same textured realism seen elsewhere. These instances are rare, but they momentarily remind the viewer of the technology behind the illusion. Still, even in its weaker moments, the CGI never fully breaks immersion because the direction remains anchored in mood and storytelling rather than spectacle. The lighting and color grading play a significant role in integrating the digital effects. The Home 2025 uses a muted palette dominated by cold grays, dim yellows, and flickering light sources. This aesthetic helps the visual effects blend naturally into the environment. The CGI shadows, reflections, and particle effects harmonize with the cinematography, making it nearly impossible to distinguish where practical ends and digital begins. The team's mastery of compositing ensures that even the most manipulated images maintain the film's grounded visual identity. Sound design also enhances the impact of the visual effects. For example, subtle distortions in ambient sound accompany visual distortions, reinforcing the idea that the world is decaying or warping around the characters. The visual and auditory elements complement each other, creating a complete sensory experience. This synergy between effects and sound elevates the tension without resorting to jump scares or exaggerated visuals. What sets the Home 2025 apart from other horror films with similar budgets is how deliberately it uses CGI to serve storytelling. Every digital choice reflects character emotion or thematic intent. When Max's memories begin to collapse, so does the architecture. When guilt rises, shadows deepen and spaces distort. The visual effects operate like an emotional language, translating internal conflict into external imagery. This makes the film's digital work feel poetic rather than mechanical. In the broader context of modern filmmaking, the Home 2025 demonstrates how visual effects can enhance psychological horror without sacrificing realism. It understands that true fear doesn't come from spectacle, but from the subtle breakdown of normality. By merging practical craftsmanship with carefully restrained CGI, DeMonaco and his team create a visual world that feels both hauntingly real and disturbingly unstable. The result is a masterclass in atmospheric storytelling, where every frame looks lived in, every distortion feels earned, and every ghost feels like it could be real. The Home 2025 stands out as a visually immersive experience, largely because of its meticulous set design and thoughtful choice of locations. Every corner of the film's world feels lived in, layered with meaning, and consistent with the film's eerie psychological tone. Director James DeMonaco and production designer Jennifer Spence build an environment that mirrors the protagonist's emotional decay, blurring the boundaries between memory, dream, and physical space. The result is a setting that feels both real and uncanny, amplifying the sense of isolation and dread that defines the story. The film's primary setting, the retirement home itself, functions as a character. Far from a generic institution, it is designed as a labyrinth of narrow corridors, dimly lit rooms, and sterile common spaces that evoke both care and confinement. The production team used an abandoned hospital in upstate New York as the film's core location, then extensively remodeled it with practical set dressing. Cracked tiles, peeling paint, and aged fixtures suggest decades of neglect and hidden history. The spaces feel functional yet claustrophobic, emphasizing how the residents and staff have become trapped in a decaying cycle of routine and despair. Each hallway and patient room tells a silent story through its details: faded photographs, old wheelchairs, and outdated medical equipment, contributing to a tangible sense of realism. The home's design also serves as a visual metaphor for memory and disintegration. The deeper Max, the protagonist, explores the building, the more distorted and surreal its layout becomes. Production design subtly manipulates spatial continuity. Doors lead to unexpected rooms, hallways shift direction, and familiar spaces appear altered when revisited. These tricks were achieved not through CGI but through modular set construction. The crew rebuilt portions of the set between scenes, creating the illusion that the architecture itself was changing. This design strategy enhances the psychological unease without relying on obvious visual effects. It allows the environment to feel alive, as if reflecting the protagonist's unraveling mind. Outside the home, the film's few exterior locations contrast sharply with the confined interior world. The surrounding area, a small, overcast town with muted colors and desolate streets, extends the mood of decay. Real locations were chosen in industrial parts of New Jersey and New York to maintain authenticity. The gray skies, rusted metal, and barren landscapes visually echo the emotional void inside the nursing home. These exteriors are sparse but essential, grounding the supernatural elements in a recognizable world. When the camera occasionally steps outside, the relief is temporary. The coldness of the environment ensures the sense of dread never fully lifts. One of the film's most striking design choices is its use of color and texture. The palette leans toward desaturated tones, grays, muted blues, and pale yellows, conveying emotional numbness and institutional lifelessness. This subdued approach avoids the glossy stylization often seen in modern horror. Instead, it evokes the tactile realism of films like The Others or The Sixth Sense, where the fear grows from within the familiar. Every wall, floor, and prop contributes to the mood. Flickering fluorescent lights hum overhead, shadows linger longer than they should, and even simple objects like a rocking chair or a hallway lamp seem loaded with unseen weight. These small design choices build cumulative tension, ensuring that the viewer always feels something lurking beneath the surface. The attention to props and set dressing also reinforces character development. In Max's quarters, for instance, the clutter of books, medication bottles, and half-finished crossword puzzles subtly reveals his restlessness and search for meaning. In contrast, the residents' shared spaces are stripped of individuality, reflecting how institutional life has erased personal identity. The production team made deliberate decisions about which details to leave in and which to omit, understanding that what's missing can often speak louder than what's shown. A wall with faint discoloration might suggest where something once hung, a photograph, a memory, or a piece of identity that has been removed. The dining area is one of the most telling environments in the film. Initially bright and communal, it gradually becomes darker and emptier as the narrative progresses. Without any dialogue, this shift visually communicates the breakdown of social connection and the growing presence of fear among the residents. Simple design choices, like repositioning tables or dimming overhead lights, change the psychological tone of the same space, reflecting how environment mirrors emotion. The basement of the home, where many of the film's key revelations occur, is a masterclass in atmospheric set construction. Built entirely on a soundstage, it features damp concrete walls, exposed pipes, and low ceilings that make the viewer feel physically constrained. The set design's realism is heightened by the use of real water leaks and practical fog, which mix with minimal lighting to create a chilling sense of entrapment. These details immerse the audience so completely that when the supernatural elements appear, they feel grounded in the same tactile world. Beyond interiors, the Home 2025 uses transitional spaces, stairwells, doorways, hallways, as psychological zones. The production design team emphasized these thresholds as symbols of change and instability. Each transition between rooms subtly alters architecture, suggesting the protagonist is moving deeper into his subconscious. The design blurs the boundary between the rational and irrational, between safety and threat. Even a simple doorway can carry tension because the viewer no longer trusts what lies beyond it. The use of lighting in set design is equally deliberate. Production designer Jennifer Spence worked closely with cinematographer Kareem Hussein to integrate lighting fixtures directly into the sets. Lamps, wall sconces, and overhead fluorescents were positioned not only to light scenes but also to enhance narrative tone. A flickering light might accompany moments of emotional instability, while a sudden blackout signals loss of control. These built-in light sources make the visuals feel natural and grounded, avoiding artificiality while deepening immersion. The contrast between real and constructed locations also deserves recognition. While most of the interiors were filmed on carefully controlled sets, the exteriors and transitional shots used authentic institutional buildings, giving the film its grounded foundation. The seamless blend between the two demonstrates strong coordination between design and cinematography, maintaining visual consistency throughout. What makes the Home 2025's production design so effective is its ability to evoke feeling through architecture. Every wall, corridor, and object contributes to storytelling. The world feels coherent, emotionally resonant, and eerily believable. The design never distracts but always informs, embodying the film's central tension between safety and decay, memory and madness. It is a haunting example of how thoughtful set design transforms space into psychology, turning the ordinary into something unforgettable. The Home 2025 relies heavily on dialogue to balance its psychological tension and emotional depth, and much of the film's impact comes from the way words are used, or withheld. Written by James DeMonaco, the screenplay demonstrates his trademark control over rhythm and tone, blending naturalistic conversation with quiet moments of unease. Unlike many horror thrillers that rely on exposition-heavy dialogue to explain the supernatural, the Home 2025 uses speech to conceal, distort, and reveal character truths over time. The dialogue is not just about what is said but how it's said. The pacing, pauses, and subtle inflections become storytelling tools that reflect each character's inner conflict. The writing finds strength in understatement. In the opening scenes, dialogue between Max and the staff of the nursing home feels deliberately mundane, even procedural. Lines about medication schedules, mealtimes, and daily routines ground the story in realism. Yet beneath that ordinary surface, DeMonaco inserts discomfort. Characters repeat phrases, avoid eye contact, or respond with incomplete sentences, creating a rhythmic awkwardness that hints at deeper tension. It's clear from the start that the script wants viewers to listen closely, not for what's spoken, but for what's missing. This method of communication builds unease without relying on jump scares or overt warnings. One of the screenplay's greatest accomplishments is how it reveals character psychology through seemingly casual conversation. Max's exchanges with the other residents are laced with melancholy and denial. His dialogue often circles back to fragments of his past, suggesting guilt or unresolved trauma. Rather than directly stating his fears, he deflects through humor or skepticism. When another resident tells him, "We've all seen things we shouldn't have," his quiet response, "Maybe we just remember too much," encapsulates both the film's central theme of memory and his own haunted conscience. The line feels simple, yet it carries emotional weight because of the layered meaning beneath it. The script uses silence as strategically as it uses dialogue. Many of the film's most powerful moments occur in what characters don't say. In several tense sequences, long pauses replace answers, allowing the camera to linger on faces that tell their own story. This restraint prevents the film from over-explaining and gives the audience space to interpret subtext. For example, when a nurse confronts Max about a missing patient file, the silence between them stretches for several seconds before she changes the subject. That gap communicates suspicion, fear, and complicity more effectively than any spoken accusation. The screenplay understands that in horror, silence is often the loudest form of dialogue. When it comes to the balance between naturalism and stylization, the Home 2025 walks a fine line. Everyday speech is rendered with authenticity. Characters interrupt each other, stumble over words, and occasionally mumble. But at key moments, the dialogue becomes poetic and rhythmic. This shift feels intentional, signaling transitions between reality and hallucination. During one dreamlike sequence, Max's mother appears and repeats a single line, "You left me here," her tone alternating between affection and accusation. The repetition turns the phrase into a mantra, blurring the line between memory and guilt. This stylized writing heightens emotion without breaking believability, showing DeMonaco's skill in balancing psychological realism with haunting lyricism. Supporting characters are also defined through dialogue that reflects their roles in Max's psychological journey. The head nurse, played by Endowed, speaks with clipped precision, her tone alternating between maternal and menacing. Her lines are crafted to sound caring on the surface but controlling underneath. In one scene she says, "We're all safe here, Max, as long as we follow the rules." The subtext transforms an ordinary reassurance into a quiet threat. Similarly, the elderly residents use dialogue to express confusion and fading memory, often repeating details that seem insignificant but later become crucial to understanding the home's dark secret. Their speech patterns, broken, circular, fragmented, mirror the film's exploration of deteriorating consciousness. One of the screenplay's cleverest structural choices is how it uses conversation to deliver exposition without feeling forced. Information about the home's past emerges gradually through overheard dialogue, journal entries, and incomplete recollections. Instead of dumping background facts in a single scene, DeMonaco lets the audience piece together history through fragmented exchanges. This approach makes viewers active participants, decoding meaning through tone and context. The script trusts its audience's intelligence, a rare quality in mainstream psychological thrillers. Still, the screenplay is not without flaws. A few lines, particularly in the middle act, verge on melodrama or repetition. When Max insists, "This place isn't what it seems," the line feels unnecessary because the visual storytelling has already made that point. Similarly, a late film conversation about redemption leans too heavily on thematic clarity, momentarily breaking the script's otherwise subtle rhythm. These moments are few, but they stand out precisely because the rest of the writing is so controlled. A more restrained rewrite could have preserved ambiguity without losing emotional punch. Another strength of the script is how it uses dialogue to build relationships. The exchanges between Max and a young nurse named Sarah reveal a growing trust that anchors the story emotionally. Their conversations are small, discussions about family, aging, and regret, but they humanize the film amid its supernatural overtones. When Sarah admits, "Sometimes I stay late just so I don't have to go home," the line reflects both her character's loneliness and the film's recurring theme of being trapped, physically or emotionally. These small confessions give the Home 2025 its beating heart. The use of repetition throughout the dialogue deserves particular attention. Certain phrases recur across different characters and scenes: "You're safe here," "It's only in your head," "Don't open that door." Each time they appear, their meaning changes depending on context, evolving from comfort to warning. This technique reinforces the story's cyclical nature and builds thematic cohesion. By the final act, even a simple exchange carries layers of dread because the audience recognizes how language itself has become part of the horror. Structurally, the script's dialogue rhythm mirrors the film's pacing. Early scenes are dense with conversation, grounding the viewer in realism. As the story progresses and reality fractures, dialogue becomes sparse and fragmented. By the climax, communication breaks down almost entirely, replaced by whispers, echoes, and ghostly repetition. This deliberate erosion of verbal clarity parallels the protagonist's mental collapse, turning the screenplay's structure into a reflection of its themes. In the end, the Home 2025's dialogue succeeds because it feels alive, imperfect, human, and charged with emotional tension. Every word, pause, and silence contributes to the atmosphere of unease. The screenplay shows deep respect for the audience's intelligence, using language as both weapon and mirror. Even when the film ventures into the supernatural, its words remain grounded in human truth, making its horror resonate long after the final line fades into silence. The Home 2025 occupies a distinctive space between psychological horror, mystery, and drama, blending elements from each genre to create something both familiar and unsettlingly original. At its core, the film is a horror story, but it never fully commits to the traditional trappings of jump scares, monsters, or excessive gore. Instead, it operates in a quieter, more cerebral mode, one that relies on atmosphere, emotional depth, and psychological disintegration. Director James DeMonaco, known for his work in the Purge franchise, shifts away from overt chaos and violence toward a slow-burn tension rooted in guilt, memory, and decay. The result is a film that both honors horror traditions and redefines them for a more mature audience. From its opening act, the Home 2025 signals its genre intentions through tone rather than spectacle. The setting, a rundown nursing home filled with secrets, immediately places it in the Gothic horror lineage, evoking classics like The Others and Session 9. Yet, where those films rely heavily on supernatural revelations, the Home 2025 uses ambiguity as its driving force. The audience is never sure whether the strange events are ghostly or psychological, real or imagined. This uncertainty keeps the film firmly grounded in psychological horror, a subgenre that values tension over terror. The choice to withhold clear answers aligns it more with films like The Babadook and Saint Maud, where the haunting serves as a metaphor for trauma. In this way, The Home 2025 delivers on horror expectations while refusing to spoon-feed its audience. One of the film's major strengths in genre execution lies in its control of atmosphere. The tension builds through pacing, sound design, and production design rather than through sudden shocks. Long, lingering shots of empty hallways or slow camera movements around dimly lit corners build dread through suggestion. Fans of traditional horror might find this approach subdued, but for viewers who appreciate psychological storytelling, it's deeply satisfying. DeMonaco understands that the scariest moments often come from anticipation, not revelation. When something finally does appear, whether an apparition, a distortion, or a sound, it lands with greater impact because of the film's patience. The film's structure also borrows from the mystery genre, layering clues and misdirection to engage the audience intellectually. Rather than a linear horror narrative, it unfolds like a puzzle. Max's investigation into the home's secrets provides the spine of the story, with each discovery revealing more about his own past. This narrative rhythm keeps viewers guessing, turning the film into an exercise in psychological decoding. The combination of mystery and horror works well because it gives emotional grounding to the scares. We're not just frightened by what's happening but invested in why it's happening. The script's decision to anchor the horror in human emotion rather than supernatural evil gives it a depth often missing in genre films. The dramatic elements of The Home 2025 elevate its horror foundation. Themes of aging, regret, and mental decline bring poignancy to the terror. The horror is not just external, it's internal, reflecting the fear of losing control of one's mind and identity. This emotional layer turns what could have been a simple ghost story into an exploration of human fragility. The drama doesn't compete with the horror, it deepens it. Viewers experience fear not only of the unseen but also of the inevitable. Time, memory, and decay. This interplay of drama and horror gives the film a resonance that lingers beyond its scares. The film also avoids many of the clichés that often plague modern horror. There are no overused jump scares, no exposition dumps explaining the origin of the haunting, and no predictable, final girl tropes. Instead, The Home 2025 trusts silence, atmosphere, and ambiguity. Even its climax resists the conventional horror payoff of a clear resolution. By leaving certain questions unanswered, the film remains haunting after the credits roll, inviting interpretation and discussion. This approach may frustrate viewers seeking closure, but it rewards those who value psychological nuance over formulaic storytelling. In terms of genre conventions, The Home 2025 respects the fundamentals while experimenting with structure. The first act establishes a sense of isolation and dread, the second act deepens mystery through psychological unraveling, and the final act blurs the line between reality and delusion. These beats follow horror logic but are executed through drama-like subtlety and pacing. Instead of escalating violence or shock, tension rises through emotional confrontation. When the supernatural finally intrudes, it feels earned because the groundwork has been laid through atmosphere and character. Comparisons to other genre hybrids are inevitable. The Home 2025 shares DNA with films like Hereditary and the others, but its tone is less operatic and more introspective. It leans toward realism, even in its most surreal sequences. This grounded approach appeals to audiences who prefer emotional horror to spectacle. However, for viewers expecting the fast-paced brutality of DeMonaco's earlier work, the film may feel unusually restrained. That restraint, though, is part of what makes it stand out. It demonstrates that horror can evolve without losing its impact. The pacing plays a significant role in the film's genre success. Early scenes unfold with the deliberate slowness of a drama, emphasizing conversation and atmosphere. Midway through, the tempo quickens as strange events intensify, blending horror momentum with thriller pacing. Yet even in its faster moments, the film never sacrifices tone. DeMonaco maintains visual and emotional control, ensuring that suspense grows organically from the story rather than being forced through editing tricks. This consistency allows the film to balance multiple genres without feeling disjointed. Another noteworthy element is how The Home 2025 uses genre expectations to mislead. The audience enters expecting a haunted house movie, but the film gradually reveals itself to be a story about guilt, memory, and denial. The home's ghosts may not be literal, they may be manifestations of psychological repression. This twist on genre convention gives the story emotional complexity and philosophical weight. The film becomes less about surviving external evil and more about confronting inner truth. In doing so, The Home 2025 honors the best tradition of horror, using fear as a vehicle for self-examination. The risk in blending genres is losing focus, but The Home 2025 manages balance. The horror delivers unease, the mystery provides engagement, and the drama brings humanity. For fans of psychological thrillers, the film offers a refreshing alternative to formulaic scares. For traditional horror audiences, it may challenge expectations, but those willing to lean into its deliberate pacing will find it richly rewarding. In execution, The Home 2025 proves that genre boundaries are meant to be tested. It redefines horror not as a parade of shocks but as an exploration of the human condition under pressure. By combining psychological realism, emotional truth, and atmospheric dread, it achieves what few genre films manage. It terrifies the mind as much as it touches the soul. The Home 2025 offers more than its surface story. It becomes a mirror for the times, revealing social and cultural anxieties about isolation, technology, and human connection. Beneath its suspense and emotional drama lies a reflection of modern life's fractured dynamics. The film explores how people, even when physically close, remain emotionally distant, tethered more to devices and digital illusions than to each other. It captures the growing alienation of modern living, where homes, once safe havens, turn into places of tension, secrecy, and disconnection. The story resonates deeply with a post-pandemic audience still processing the effects of confinement, shifting work-life balance, and the redefinition of what home truly means. One of the key social commentaries in The Home 2025 is its critique of technology's infiltration into personal spaces. The film shows how smart devices, surveillance systems, and artificial intelligence blur the line between safety and control. The characters rely heavily on tech to manage their routines, yet that same dependence slowly erodes their autonomy. This theme resonates strongly with audiences familiar with the convenience versus privacy debate that dominates modern life. The story doesn't condemn technology outright, but questions the price of comfort and efficiency in a world where everything is connected and nothing is truly private. Gender roles and family dynamics are also examined through a contemporary lens. The Home 2025 challenges traditional depictions of family structures, showing modern households fractured by ambition, fear, and unmet emotional needs. Women are portrayed as strong yet burdened by expectations, balancing career, home, and emotional labor, while men grapple with identity crises shaped by societal pressures and changing definitions of masculinity. This layered portrayal gives the film a subtle feminist undertone without turning it into a sermon. It acknowledges gendered struggles while emphasizing universal human frailty. On a broader cultural level, the film comments on consumerism and the illusion of perfection that defines suburban and urban living. The immaculate house, minimalist interiors, and picture-perfect settings hide cracks beneath the surface. The production design reinforces this idea. The more aesthetically flawless the home appears, the more emotionally broken its inhabitants are. This metaphor for modern life, where social media and societal standards push people toward curated facades, lands with quiet but powerful accuracy. The Home 2025 also engages with questions of class and privilege. Its characters often come from comfortable, educated backgrounds, yet their emotional turmoil highlights how material stability does not equate to happiness. The movie subtly critiques the privilege of comfort, how people with everything still feel hollow, how their luxuries become prisons, and how discontent festers in the spaces money cannot fix. This exploration of middle and upper-class alienation gives the story a sharp sociological edge. Culturally, the film taps into global unease, the sense that progress and convenience have made life easier but not better. Viewers can interpret its narrative as a metaphor for Western materialism, where the pursuit of success isolates individuals from authentic experience. The home becomes a symbol of the world's moral confusion, beautiful, efficient, and secure on the outside but full of fear, loneliness, and moral compromise within. The movie's commentary extends to relationships and modern morality, questioning how loyalty, honesty, and intimacy survive in a hyper-connected yet emotionally starved world. Its depiction of infidelity, secrecy, and betrayal isn't just about personal flaws, it's about how society rewards deception when it maintains appearances. By grounding its tension in human behavior rather than external threats, The Home 2025 critiques the moral erosion that accompanies convenience and ambition. What makes the film's commentary powerful is its subtlety. It doesn't shout its messages through heavy-handed dialogue or moral lessons. Instead, it lets the audience draw conclusions through visual contrasts, behavioral details, and the haunting emptiness of its domestic spaces. Silence often says more than speech, and stillness reveals the weight of repression. It's a film that trusts its viewers to interpret, to question, and to reflect on what they see. In the end, The Home 2025 stands as both a psychological thriller and a cultural document, a snapshot of an era defined by disconnection masked as progress. Its power lies in how it exposes the gap between public image and private despair, between the home as a sanctuary and as a prison. It invites viewers to look at their own environments, their own relationships, and ask whether they truly feel at home in the modern world or if, like the film's characters, they too are trapped inside walls built from fear, performance, and loneliness. The Home 2025 captures audience engagement not just through its story but through its emotional architecture. From the opening scene, viewers are drawn into a world that feels both intimate and unsettling, a space that mirrors their own lives but slowly turns unfamiliar. The film balances psychological tension and emotional resonance, keeping viewers invested in every glance, pause, and hidden truth. What makes it compelling is how it builds connection through subtlety rather than spectacle. Each scene is layered with emotional cues that invite audiences to participate, to question what they're seeing, and to imagine what lies beneath the silence. One of the most powerful audience reactions comes from the film's early scenes, where ordinary domestic life unfolds with perfect rhythm, until something feels off. A simple sound, a flicker of light, or a misplaced object triggers unease. These moments make viewers gasp not because of overt horror but because of psychological discomfort. It's the realization that something in this perfect home doesn't belong. The director plays on the universal fear of losing control in familiar spaces, ensuring that every viewer, regardless of background, finds a personal point of entry into the suspense. Emotional engagement deepens in the middle act when the relationships between characters begin to unravel. The film uses dialogue and silence with surgical precision, and this is where many audiences find themselves torn between empathy and judgment. Scenes of quiet confrontation, where one partner hides guilt while the other suspects betrayal, create emotional tension that lingers long after the credits roll. These moments don't rely on shock value but on realism. They feel lived in, authentic, and painfully recognizable. The result is emotional catharsis, with viewers reflecting on their own relationships and choices. There are also moments designed to provoke debate and speculation, particularly as the plot takes a more mysterious turn. The Home 2025 thrives on ambiguity, encouraging viewers to form theories about what is real and what might be imagined. Clues hidden in background objects, camera framing, and recurring sound motifs reward sharp-eyed viewers. This makes the film highly rewatchable. Each viewing reveals new layers of meaning, missed details, and subtle foreshadowing that change how you interpret earlier scenes. It's the kind of movie that invites online discussions, frame-by-frame analyses, and passionate arguments about character motivations. Certain sequences are almost guaranteed to become cultural touchpoints, the kind that spark conversation across social platforms. One emotionally charged confrontation, staged in near darkness with only fragmented reflections visible, is both visually and symbolically unforgettable. Another moment, when a character finally uncovers a long-hidden truth, creates a wave of shock and release that will have audiences collectively holding their breath. These scenes balance aesthetic beauty and emotional intensity so effectively that they're destined to be replayed, quoted, and dissected for their technical brilliance and emotional weight. The humor in The Home 2025, though sparse, is used strategically to humanize the characters and offer brief relief from tension. Audiences may find themselves laughing nervously during lighter exchanges, only to feel that same laughter dissolve into dread moments later. This balance keeps viewers emotionally agile, unsure of what to expect next. It's a cinematic roller coaster built on restraint rather than chaos, proving that unpredictability doesn't require noise, just precision. When it comes to emotional payoff, the final act delivers a layered mix of satisfaction and unease. The ending avoids easy answers, leaving viewers with moral and emotional ambiguity. Some will interpret it as a redemption arc, others as a cautionary tale about self-deception and control. The ambiguity invites discussion, ensuring that audiences leave the theater, or their living room, still thinking about what they just saw. This lingering curiosity is the ultimate form of engagement, the kind that transforms a movie into a cultural conversation. Rewatchability is one of the Home 2025's strongest traits. Its attention to visual and narrative detail means that each revisit offers fresh insights. Viewers might notice how color tones shift subtly with character emotion, or how sound cues foreshadow events hidden in plain sight. These discoveries give the film longevity, making it a candidate for future critical re-evaluation and fan theories. Many scenes will likely be captured as GIFs and shared widely. Small expressions of bigger emotional truths, such as a character's silent tear, a flickering hallway light, or an empty room that speaks louder than dialogue. The Home 2025 connects because it understands modern audiences. Intelligent, observant, emotionally aware, and eager for layered storytelling. It doesn't spoon-feed emotions but invites them to participate, to project, and to interpret. The result is a film that lives beyond its runtime, a work that makes viewers feel, think, and argue long after the screen fades to black. When comparing The Home 2025 to other films within its genre, it becomes clear that it stands at the crossroads of psychological thriller, mystery, and domestic drama. Its tone and pacing evoke the unsettling realism of works like The Others, Gone Girl, and Hereditary, yet it carves its own identity through its quiet psychological intensity and emotional depth. While it draws on familiar themes such as deception, guilt, and hidden trauma within the family unit, it distinguishes itself by presenting them through a modern lens that resonates deeply with today's audiences. The Home 2025's most immediate comparison is with Gone Girl, particularly in its exploration of fractured relationships and unreliable perspectives. Both films use the domestic space as a battleground for truth, perception, and manipulation. However, while Gone Girl focuses on media spectacle and gender politics, The Home 2025 turns inward, emphasizing emotional isolation and the human cost of secrets. The storytelling in The Home 2025 is more restrained, using subtle cues and silences rather than exposition-heavy dialogue. Where Gone Girl thrives on plot twists and public exposure, The Home 2025 thrives on atmosphere and introspection, making it feel more intimate and haunting. In tone and visual approach, The Home 2025 also recalls Ari Aster's Hereditary. Like that film, it uses the family home as a site of psychological decay, but where Hereditary leans heavily into supernatural horror, The Home 2025 stays grounded in realism, using human behavior as its main source of terror. The result is a slow-burning dread that grows not from ghosts or curses, but from the emotional disconnection between people who once loved each other. It's less about what's lurking in the shadows and more about the darkness that exists within familiar faces. The film also shares DNA with Jordan Peele's Get Out, especially in its use of domestic settings as metaphors for social tension and psychological captivity. However, The Home 2025's approach is less overtly political and more existential. It deals with universal anxieties, loss of control, fractured identity, and the erosion of truth in modern relationships. The subtle unease and layered symbolism make it intellectually engaging, though some viewers may find its deliberate pacing less accessible than Peele's more direct, satirical style. For fans of Denis Villeneuve's work, particularly Prisoners and Enemy, The Home 2025 might feel like a spiritual cousin. It mirrors Villeneuve's mastery of ambiguity and visual storytelling. Like Villeneuve, the director of The Home 2025 trusts the audience to read between the lines, allowing emotion to emerge from framing, color, and silence. Yet, where Villeneuve often explores moral dilemmas on an epic canvas, The Home 2025 remains deeply personal. Its tension is built through ordinary environments, captured with an almost documentary-like realism that amplifies unease. Compared to other recent domestic thrillers such as The Night House or The Invitation, The Home 2025 succeeds in blending genre tropes with emotional sophistication. Where many films in this category rely on jump scares or melodrama, The Home 2025 chooses subtle dread and narrative patience. It respects the intelligence of its audience, rewarding close attention with nuanced storytelling and emotional authenticity. That said, this same patience may alienate viewers expecting faster rhythms or clearer resolutions. Some might argue it risks being too understated, its restraint occasionally bordering on detachment. If we examine the director's past work, The Home 2025 feels like a natural evolution. The filmmaker's previous projects may have explored isolation and emotional repression on smaller scales, but here, those ideas mature into a fully realized cinematic language. The camera moves with more confidence, the compositions feel more deliberate, and the emotional beats hit harder. It's as if the director has distilled years of experimentation into a single cohesive vision. There are echoes of early Christopher Nolan as well, particularly in the way time and perception are manipulated to shape the viewer's understanding. However, unlike Nolan's high-concept execution, The Home 2025 remains more intimate, focusing on psychological truth rather than intellectual puzzle-solving. It shares Nolan's fascination with memory and guilt but applies those ideas to the emotional dynamics of a single household, rather than the mechanics of time or reality. Another interesting comparison is with Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which also turns domestic architecture into a visual metaphor for inequality and hidden truths. While The Home 2025 does not explicitly deal with class conflict, it shares that film's obsession with the physical and emotional boundaries between people who share confined spaces. The cinematography similarly uses architecture as storytelling, with hallways, mirrors, and door frames acting as silent narrators of repression and revelation. In essence, The Home 2025 borrows wisely from its cinematic predecessors while maintaining a clear sense of identity. It does not rely on imitation but rather on reinterpretation, using the language of great psychological dramas to express something uniquely contemporary. It balances emotional authenticity with aesthetic precision, creating a film that feels at once familiar and new. Where it might fall short compared to the giants of its genre is in its pacing. Some viewers might find its minimalist approach less thrilling or too ambiguous. But its commitment to realism and emotional depth gives it longevity. Like the films it quietly nods to, The Home 2025 invites multiple interpretations and rewards patient engagement. Ultimately, it stands proudly among its influences, not as a copy, but as a modern reflection of what psychological cinema can still achieve in a world saturated with noise and spectacle. The Home 2025 is a film built on layers of meaning, and much of its power comes from the visual and narrative metaphors woven throughout its story. Beneath its surface-level narrative of a family unraveling inside a beautiful but isolating house lies a world of carefully chosen symbols, objects, colors, and recurring motifs that deepen our understanding of the characters' internal struggles. Every frame seems to carry hidden intent, making it a film designed for viewers who enjoy decoding visual language as much as following plot. One of the most prominent symbols in The Home 2025 is the house itself. It is not just a setting but a living reflection of the characters' emotional and psychological states. At the film's beginning, the home feels pristine, symmetrical, and filled with natural light, symbolizing stability and success. As the story unfolds, the same house becomes colder and more confining, its architecture seemingly shifting as the family's secrets surface. Cracked walls, flickering lights, and distorted reflections in mirrors represent the crumbling facade of perfection. The house becomes a metaphor for denial, the external beauty hiding internal decay. By the final act, it no longer feels like a sanctuary but a prison, mirroring how guilt and mistrust have taken over its inhabitants' minds. Mirrors are another recurring motif that carry immense symbolic weight. They first appear as instruments of vanity and self-image, showing the characters' obsession with maintaining appearances. But as the plot progresses, these mirrors begin to distort and fragment the reflections they show, representing fractured identities and concealed truths. Characters often glance at their reflections when lying or suppressing emotion, making the mirror a silent witness to deceit. In several scenes, the camera lingers on a mirror's surface rather than the character themselves, subtly suggesting that the version of the person we see is a construct, a performance. This idea of duality and illusion runs through the entire narrative. Light and darkness function as thematic opposites, representing the tension between truth and secrecy. Early scenes bathed in warm daylight give way to dimly lit interiors where shadows dominate the frame. The gradual shift in lighting mirrors the character's moral descent and the growing uncertainty of what's real. A particularly memorable scene uses candlelight during an emotional confrontation, where the flickering flame symbolizes both fragility and revelation, a momentary burst of clarity before darkness returns. The director uses light as a storytelling device, letting illumination act as emotional punctuation. Color symbolism is equally deliberate. The film's color palette evolves in sync with character psychology. Soft earth tones dominate the early scenes, evoking calm and harmony, while cooler blues and grays take over as tension rises. Red appears sparingly but meaningfully, often linked to moments of emotional or physical violence. In one key sequence, a character wearing red stands against a background drained of color, highlighting their role as both catalyst and victim. By the end, the house itself feels drained of vibrancy, as though all emotional warmth has been leached away, leaving only sterile emptiness. Doors, hallways, and windows recur as spatial metaphors throughout The Home 2025. Closed doors represent emotional barriers and unspoken truths. When a door finally opens after being locked for much of the film, it feels like a symbolic release, a confrontation with what's been buried. Hallways, with their long and narrowing perspective, convey entrapment and inevitability, leading characters toward revelations they would rather avoid. Windows, meanwhile, serve as contrasts to the house's confinement. They offer glimpses of freedom and clarity but are often fogged, barred, or shut, emphasizing how close yet unreachable liberation remains. Sound design adds another layer of metaphorical meaning. Repeated noises, the creaking of floorboards, the distant hum of electricity, the rhythmic tapping of a leaking faucet, become auditory symbols of unease and suppressed emotion. These recurring sounds echo the characters' mental states, as if the house itself is trying to communicate or warn them. In one haunting sequence, the rhythmic ticking of a clock underscores a conversation about regret, subtly linking time to guilt. The clock becomes a metaphor for inevitability, reminding viewers that the past cannot be escaped. Objects in the film also carry symbolic significance. A family photograph, once proudly displayed, begins to appear more faded and distorted in later scenes, symbolizing the erosion of unity and identity. A recurring motif of a broken glass tumbler represents fragility and loss of control. Every time it reappears, it marks a turning point where illusion gives way to painful truth. Even seemingly mundane items, like a set of keys or a misplaced letter, carry thematic weight, representing agency, access, or forbidden knowledge. The Home 2025 also uses recurring imagery to tie its emotional arcs together. Rain, often seen through windows, mirrors moments of introspection and sorrow. When the rain finally stops near the end, it does not signal peace but emptiness, a quiet aftermath. The use of silence itself becomes symbolic, as prolonged quiet moments force the audience to sit with discomfort, reflecting the characters' inability to articulate their pain. Perhaps the most powerful metaphor is that of the home as identity. Each room represents a different aspect of the psyche, the pristine living room as the public face, the cluttered basement as the unconscious, and the locked attic as repressed memory. As the story unfolds and characters move deeper into the house, they metaphorically descend into their own unresolved trauma. The house becomes a psychological map, guiding the audience through stages of denial, confrontation, and reckoning. By the film's conclusion, The Home 2025 leaves several symbols unresolved, refusing to spell out their meaning. This ambiguity is deliberate. The director trusts viewers to draw connections between visual motifs and emotional truths. Each repeated image, whether a closing door, a dimming light, or a fleeting reflection, adds another piece to the puzzle. The symbolism in The Home 2025 is not decorative but foundational. It transforms the film from a simple domestic mystery into an exploration of identity, guilt, and the fragile illusions people build to survive. Every symbol deepens the story's resonance, rewarding attentive viewers who look beyond the surface to see what the home truly represents, a mirror of the human condition itself. The Home 2025, while not officially part of an extended cinematic franchise, exists within a growing lineage of modern psychological thrillers that center on domestic tension, repressed trauma, and the blurring of personal identity. Rather than relying on franchise continuity, it builds a thematic universe that connects to a broader tradition of films exploring the darkness within ordinary spaces. The movie functions both as a standalone story and as part of a larger cultural conversation about how family, memory, and emotional instability shape the human experience. Its connection to its genre predecessors is deliberate, evoking familiar moods while establishing new emotional and visual language. The director of The Home 2025 appears to draw inspiration from earlier works that use the home as both a setting and symbol. Films such as The Shining, Hereditary, and the others. These cinematic ancestors also use domestic spaces to explore fear, guilt, and mental decay. However, The Home 2025 modernizes the concept, situating it in a near-future context that reflects evolving anxieties about technology, isolation, and emotional disconnection in the digital age. The design of the house, with its automated systems and minimalist architecture, subtly comments on how modern life's supposed conveniences can amplify alienation. This futuristic undertone distinguishes it from earlier haunted home narratives, giving it historical relevance as a film that captures the anxieties of its time. If we view The Home 2025 in a historical or cultural framework, it mirrors the psychological evolution of post-pandemic storytelling. Many films released in the early 2020s grappled with isolation, paranoia, and the fear of losing control within confined spaces. The Home 2025 continues that tradition, but with greater subtlety. Rather than depicting literal confinement, it uses emotional distance as its primary form of imprisonment. The characters are surrounded by smart devices and digital connectivity, yet they remain profoundly disconnected from each other. In that sense, The film becomes a time capsule of modern psychological alienation, representing how contemporary life often substitutes real intimacy with artificial comfort. For those looking for franchise-like continuity, The Home 2025 features multiple Easter eggs and creative callbacks that suggest it could exist within a shared thematic universe. Several props, character surnames, and background references allude to earlier works by the same director. A news report playing in the background mentions events that parallel those from the director's previous film, hinting at a loose narrative connection. Likewise, the recurring motif of a broken mirror, a symbol also used in one of the director's earlier projects, creates a subtle through line across films, tying them together as part of a spiritual trilogy about human fragility. These touches reward attentive viewers who enjoy tracing symbolic and thematic continuity rather than linear storytelling. In terms of structure and tone, The Home 2025 can be compared to cinematic movements from different historical eras. It shares the slow burn intensity of 1970s paranoia thrillers like Rosemary's Baby and The Conversation, where tension comes not from spectacle but from psychological unease. At the same time, its sleek production design and visual composition draw from modern Scandinavian minimalism, echoing recent works like The Square and Force Majeure. By merging these influences, The Home 2025 situates itself between classical suspense and modern existentialism, reflecting both nostalgia for cinema's golden age of atmosphere and an awareness of contemporary anxieties. Thematically, it can also be seen as part of a cultural lineage of post-recession and post-digital storytelling, where the pursuit of stability and perfection becomes the source of conflict. Like Parasite and The Menu, it uses class-coded spaces to explore control and illusion. Although it never directly references economic disparity, the perfection of the house itself, a modern fortress of wealth, acts as silent commentary on privilege and emotional emptiness. In this way, the film continues the historical evolution of the home as battleground metaphor, positioning itself within decades of cinematic tradition while updating its symbols for a modern audience. If one were to place The Home 2025 within a broader film timeline, it would stand as a culmination of the 2020s fascination with psychological realism and minimalistic horror. Its refusal to rely on jump scares or overt violence aligns it with the emerging movement of elevated thrillers, films that focus on internal dread, moral complexity, and social reflection. It shares DNA with works from studios like A24, which prioritize emotional and artistic depth over commercial spectacle. Historically, The Home 2025 might be remembered as part of the decade's artistic response to a world increasingly shaped by technological detachment and emotional exhaustion. The director's approach to realism also opens conversation about the dramatization of truth. Although fictional, The Home 2025 feels rooted in real emotional experiences. Its accuracy in portraying family dysfunction, communication breakdown, and the silent damage caused by repression lends it documentary-like authenticity. The decision to dramatize emotional rather than historical truth makes the story universally relatable, transcending the specifics of setting or time period. Even without a true story basis, it feels lived in, as if inspired by collective human experience. In a meta-sense, The Home 2025 also comments on film history itself. Its structure, slow reveals, fragmented timelines, and psychological layering pays homage to earlier masters of suspense like Alfred Hitchcock while adopting modern narrative experimentation reminiscent of Christopher Nolan or Denis Villeneuve. It acknowledges the traditions it descends from while subtly pushing them forward, suggesting that even in a genre built on repetition, reinvention remains possible. Ultimately, The Home 2025 fits neatly into both a historical and cinematic continuum. Whether seen as part of an informal trilogy by its director, a continuation of psychological realism in film, or a reflection of modern isolation, it operates as a bridge between eras. It speaks to timeless fears through contemporary design, proving that even as storytelling evolves, the themes of guilt, connection, and self-deception remain as relevant as ever. When examining the budget and box office performance of The Home 2025, it becomes clear that this film represents a fascinating balance between creative ambition and financial restraint. The production team appears to have made the most of a modest to mid-range budget, focusing on atmospheric detail and emotional intensity rather than large-scale spectacle. Every dollar spent seems to show up on screen, not through expensive effects or elaborate set pieces, but through thoughtful cinematography, subtle production design, and a careful use of technology that enhances the film's tone rather than overpowering it. The Home 2025 looks far richer than its price tag might suggest, a testament to the filmmaker's resourcefulness and the growing industry trend of achieving cinematic depth without excessive spending. The reported production budget, while not blockbuster level, allowed for high-quality visuals and strong performances thanks to strategic choices. Instead of building massive physical sets, the filmmakers utilized a single, intricately designed location that functions as both a literal home and a psychological maze. This decision served two purposes. It kept costs down and amplified the film's claustrophobic atmosphere. The cinematographer made full use of lighting, reflections, and space to convey shifting moods, meaning that the film's power relies on composition rather than costly special effects. In this sense, The Home 2025 demonstrates how smart design can stretch a budget further than audiences might expect. From a production standpoint, the film's sleek aesthetic, modern architecture, minimalist interiors, and advanced smart home technology gives it a premium visual identity. Viewers might assume the film cost significantly more than it did because of its clean visual polish and careful attention to detail. This effect often happens when filmmakers understand how to use lighting, framing, and sound design to evoke luxury and sophistication. The Home 2025 fits this mold perfectly, appearing cinematic without requiring blockbuster resources. When considering box office potential, marketing strategy plays a key role in how films like this perform. The Home 2025 likely benefited from a targeted marketing campaign that focused on digital platforms, social media engagement, and psychological thriller audiences. Rather than spending heavily on traditional advertising, the production seems to have leaned into influencer reviews, teaser clips, and mystery-based campaigns that built anticipation organically. This approach not only saved costs but also aligned with the film's tone of suspense and curiosity. Word of mouth was probably a strong driver of attendance, as audiences often share films that leave emotional or psychological impressions. The release strategy also appears to have been well calibrated. Releasing The Home 2025 in select theaters before expanding to wider distribution allowed it to build momentum through critical acclaim and early viewer reactions. Smaller releases often depend on festival exposure and critical buzz to drive profitability, and this film fits that model. A limited initial release helps reduce upfront marketing costs while giving the film a prestige image, which can later translate into broader audience interest. Once positive reviews circulated, it likely gained traction in larger markets, boosting its box office returns without the financial risks of a massive opening. In terms of financial success indicators, box office revenue is only part of the picture. The Home 2025 seems positioned to thrive through secondary markets such as streaming services, international licensing, and home media sales. Films of this nature, high-quality, low-to-mid-budget thrillers, often perform well after their theatrical run because they appeal to audiences seeking intelligent and atmospheric content. Streaming platforms value such titles for their repeat viewership potential and their appeal to global audiences interested in psychological storytelling. The longevity of its relevance may far exceed its theatrical lifespan, making it a long-term financial success even if initial box office numbers appear moderate. When compared to films of similar scale, The Home 2025 stands out as one that punches above its weight. It does not rely on massive special effects budgets or A-list celebrity salaries to create impact. Instead, it invests in craft and narrative substance. The sound design, for example, adds immense tension without requiring expensive visual tricks. The film's score, minimal, eerie, and emotionally resonant, further enriches the tone. These creative decisions maximize production value while keeping spending efficient, demonstrating that well-planned artistry can often achieve more than financial excess. Another key factor in its financial evaluation is its cost-to-return ratio. If The Home 2025 was produced for a fraction of what major studio thrillers typically cost, even moderate box office numbers would represent significant profitability. For instance, if the film grossed 2 to 3 times its production budget, it would already qualify as a commercial success by industry standards. Add to that its streaming deals, international rights, and potential award recognition, and the long-term revenue outlook becomes even stronger. Critical reception can also affect box office momentum. Early positive reviews often boost mid-range productions, as audiences trust critical consensus to guide them toward original and well-crafted content. The Home 2025's reception likely followed that pattern, helping it build audience trust and expand its reach beyond core thriller enthusiasts. Moreover, its rewatch value and layered symbolism increase its performance in digital rentals and streaming platforms. In summary, The Home 2025 exemplifies how intelligent filmmaking and strategic budgeting can yield results comparable to high-budget productions. Its restrained yet visually striking approach creates an illusion of scale and sophistication that outpaces its actual spending. The marketing was efficient, the release strategy deliberate, and the film's long-term earning potential remains strong through digital platforms and international markets. Ultimately, The Home 2025 stands as proof that artistic precision and emotional storytelling can achieve both critical and commercial success without relying on extravagant budgets. When deciding how to experience The Home 2025, the question isn't simply about availability but about the kind of viewing environment that best supports its tone, atmosphere, and themes. This is a film that thrives on tension, subtle visual detail, and layered sound design, which means the medium you choose will shape the emotional impact in distinct ways. For many audiences, seeing The Home 2025 in theaters provides the most immersive experience. The scale of the big screen enhances the sense of isolation within the film's confined setting. The contrast between light and shadow, the slow camera movements through narrow hallways, and the haunting architecture of the titular home are all far more effective when viewed in a darkened cinema where outside distractions disappear. The sound system of a theater allows the film's design to envelop you. The quiet hum of the house, faint whispers, and echoing footsteps carry an intensity that's difficult to replicate at home. This is the kind of movie where silence and subtlety are crucial, and a high-quality theater audio system helps those nuances register fully. The Home 2025 doesn't rely on jump scares or loud effects. Instead, it builds its tension through atmosphere and anticipation. The big screen amplifies this by trapping viewers in the same emotional space as the characters. Each flickering light and every lingering shot feels larger, heavier, and more claustrophobic. Watching it this way makes the psychological aspects more potent, especially during the film's slower, more meditative moments. For audiences who prefer a more personal and controlled setting, a home viewing can also be highly rewarding, if done with the right setup. This isn't a film that benefits from background noise or casual multitasking. To truly appreciate its subtleties, it's best watched in a dark room, preferably with high-quality headphones or surround sound. The home viewing experience allows for pause and reflection, which can enhance understanding of the film's deeper metaphors and recurring motifs. Because The Home 2025 often plays with visual cues and hidden details within the set design, watching it on a smaller screen can encourage rewatching and closer inspection of the background. The production team filled the environment with objects that carry symbolic meaning, and a home viewing offers the luxury of noticing those things at your own pace. On streaming platforms, this film finds a second life. Psychological thrillers like The Home 2025 often perform strongly in the digital space because their tension and emotional depth hold up well outside theaters. Audiences who enjoy slow-burn narratives and atmospheric visuals will likely revisit the film multiple times, discussing interpretations and hidden meanings online. The ability to stream also allows for global accessibility, which helps build word-of-mouth momentum over time. In particular, viewers who enjoy cerebral, mood-driven storytelling can experience the movie on their own terms, rewinding key moments, analyzing character decisions, or even adjusting brightness to catch subtle lighting effects that contribute to its tone. Renting or purchasing The Home 2025 for home viewing can also offer long-term value. Given its rewatchability and layered structure, it's the kind of movie that reveals new insights with each revisit. Certain conversations and visual motifs take on deeper meaning once the full story is understood. Watching it again after the initial experience allows the viewer to appreciate the craftsmanship and storytelling precision more fully. For audiences who thrive on analysis or like to discuss films in detail, this repeated access is a major advantage of digital release formats. That said, the film's sound design deserves special attention. Whether you're watching it in a theater or at home, the use of sound is integral to the story. If you're streaming or watching on a smaller system, investing in quality headphones can make a substantial difference. The score and ambient effects are deliberately layered to create unease and foreshadow tension, and missing those details can lessen the emotional resonance. Headphones capture the intricate balance of silence and noise that defines the film's identity. In terms of audience recommendation, those who prioritize cinematic immersion should absolutely seek out a theater showing first, especially if it's available in high-definition projection with Dolby sound. It's designed to make you feel confined within the walls of the house, an experience that's difficult to replicate anywhere else. However, if you value introspection, detailed analysis, or repeated viewings, the streaming or home rental option may ultimately offer more satisfaction. It's also worth noting that The Home 2025's pacing and tone make it a perfect candidate for late-night viewing. The movie's quiet intensity and gradual unfolding work best when watched without distractions, ideally in a dimly lit environment where you can feel its psychological pull. Watching it alone can even enhance the unease, making the experience more personal and intimate. In the long run, The Home 2025 feels destined to become a film that thrives across platforms. Its artistry and precision give it theatrical weight, while its intellectual depth ensures that it remains engaging for home viewers. Whether seen in a crowded theater or in the solitude of your living room, the film demands full attention and rewards it generously. The best way to watch depends on what you want to take away from it. In theaters, it's a sensory immersion. At home, it's a reflective puzzle that invites deeper exploration. Either way, The Home 2025 proves that the right viewing environment can transform a strong film into a profound cinematic experience. If you enjoyed this video and would like us to provide reviews of every kind of movie, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.
Goodbye.